Hey everyone, it's Lisa from the blog farmhouseonboone.com, and today I want to share with you an Instant Pot 101 Instant Pot for Beginners video. I have shared quite a few recipes on here for the Instant Pot and why we love to incorporate it into our kitchen for our family. So today I want to just answer some of those most basic questions that I get a lot, and that is just how the Instant Pot works. I know that when I was looking into buying one, I think 2 years ago now, I was a little bit intimidated by it because it was just like, I felt like everything was already going well in my kitchen. I didn't really need to incorporate anything and learn anything new, because that's always sort of a challenge, trying to learn something brand new. But I am really glad, for a lot of reasons, that I did decide to bring an Instant Pot into my kitchen. I'll share some of the reasons why I love it and the recipes that I make most often in it in the end of this video. But first, let's just dive into sort of the Instant Pot itself and how the whole thing works, so that if you get one this holiday season, I know it's a little bit early to be talking about that, but it'll be here before you know it. So around Black Friday or maybe for Christmas, you will know how to use it. So let's just start by the ins and outs of this thing. So you'll see that it has a stainless steel insert. This is one of the things I like most about it. I stopped using the crock pot slow cooker in our home because there were a lot of studies that certain things were coated on the insert, and so it would leach into your food and not be good. But this is stainless steel, so that's already a material that I like to use in my kitchen, kind of mostly cast iron now, but for things like boiling, soups, I like stainless steel. So I'm glad that the only thing that makes contact with food is stainless steel. You'll see on the outside there's some markings for measurements. Honestly, this has never been applicable to me. I don't really pay any attention to that whatsoever. And then on the inside, there is a max fill line. So this is if you're making something like soup or broth or beans, something with a really high liquid content, you don't really want to go up past that max line. Again, I don't really pay much attention to that, but so far I've never had any issues. Another one would be something like oatmeal or rice. You don't really want to go past that max fill line, or you might be having a mess all over your kitchen whenever everything wants to start to boil over. All right, next let's go over the lid here. So you'll notice on the top that there is a sealing and a venting. I'll just pop this off so you can see. There is a sealing here and a venting. Now, the reason why this is important is that whenever you're going to put food in the Instant Pot and you want to bring it to pressure, you need to make sure that this little valve here that I just put back on is set to sealing. And then whenever the food is done cooking, if you're gonna do a quick release, which we'll talk about more later, you're going to want to set it to venting. And this will just cause that steam to release all over your kitchen, and you'll see steam everywhere. And that's just from releasing the pressure. Okay, another thing to notice is the silicone ring. Now mine is very miscolored at this point. If you buy a new Instant Pot, you're going to have a clear ring. I probably should at some point replace this. The key to getting out the smell from meat and chicken and things like that is putting it out in the sun and cleaning it with lemon essential oil. Still, I like to make certain things without this ring, obviously only things that don't come to pressure, because this ring is what creates the seal for this to come to pressure. But things that don't need to come to pressure, I do leave the ring out. So the ring just fits right inside like this. And now this is all set to come to pressure. So let me explain to you some of the features of how you actually use it. So you'll notice that whenever I put this on sort of sideways, it makes that nice little noise, and then you can lock it into place. Now, it will not let you start bringing it to pressure unless it's locked into place. It's a safety mechanism. I know a lot of old school cooks who are used to the original pressure cookers are very hesitant about using Instant Pots because they know that pressure cooking can be dangerous, especially when you're using the old contraptions that you basically just put on your stove. There's none of this modern safety mechanisms. And so although you do want to be cautious with your Instant Pot, you don't need to worry as much because there are locks in place and it won't let you operate it unless you have it in a safe way. So the way to do that is just put the lid on, and then you'll see this open and close thing here. If you slide it towards the close, it will make the noise that it now is locked in place. Another thing I have for my Instant Pot is an additional stainless steel insert as well as an Instant Pot glass lid. Now the reason for that is that whenever I make yogurt, I want to be able to use my Instant Pot the next day to make more bone broth or something else, and I don't want to keep the yogurt in that stainless steel pot and occupy that while the yogurt is setting up. So I did purchase an additional insert and lid so that my Instant Pot can get to cooking again right away. All right, now once you put your food in, let's say you do one of my favorites, which is you put a whole chicken in here. I have a recipe for that, a tutorial here on my YouTube channel and blog. You put the chicken in, you add a cup of water because you have to have liquid for this thing to come to pressure. Then you would just press whichever button. You could press the manual and just adjust for how many minutes you want to cook that chicken on high pressure, which other than broth, I cook everything on high pressure. Or you can have some preset buttons. So let's say you always cook chicken the same way. You always do a thawed out 4-pound chicken for 30 minutes. You might have that set here in poultry. Now last time, okay, I cooked it for 28. You can increase, decrease, or you can just leave it and you can always have your poultry set to 30. Press cancel to move on to something else. Now the saute button, I use this for a few things. One is if I'm making a roast or a chicken, I will first brown the meat and this will just get the stainless steel inside very, very hot. I also use it to bring yogurt to temperature before making it if it's not the raw milk yogurt, or a little bit of milk to temperature to get the gelatin dissolved. You'll see that if you visit the tutorials, but this is basically a way to do a one-pot meal. So if you need to saute some onions and peppers before throwing something in, this little button is handy and I use it quite a bit. I honestly never use any of these buttons. Let's say that you cook rice a lot. If you press the rice button, this is already factory settings at low pressure for 12 minutes. Again, I've never actually made rice in here, but you can set all of those to how you usually, oh, that's telling me that's about to come to pressure and I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna press cancel. How you usually do it. So let's say you make a lot of oatmeal. You could do your personal setting under the porridge one, and then every time you want to make oatmeal, say that you always make 2 cups with 1 cup water. I don't really know what you use and what you do because I never make oatmeal in this. You would just have that setting on porridge. All of these buttons look fancy, look confusing, but in reality, you could always just use the manual and just set it to whatever your recipe calls for or whatever you're making. Now my favorite button on here to use, actually I have 2 favorites, are the yogurt and the soup. So soup is automatically set to the low pressure. I like that because when I make bone broth, I want it set to low pressure. I have a tutorial for that on here. You can visit it in the link in the description below, as well as up in the cards, and find out how to make bone broth the exact way that I do it. But I use my soup button for that. And then I love my yogurt button. This would be the one reason that I would never be without an Instant Pot, okay? I can make bone broth on the stove, although I don't really prefer to do that because you have to leave it on for so long. Whereas when you cook it at pressure, you can get that nice gelled bone broth. Never fails for me. I always get gelled bone broth with my Instant Pot, but you have to cook it for several days if it's on the stove. You can also cook chicken in the oven. I have one in right now. You would not have to have an Instant Pot, although when you're in a pinch and you need food right away, and you don't have all morning to let your chicken cook like I do today, because I prepare it ahead, don't usually, you'll love your Instant Pot. But yogurt, I've never found in all of my years of traditional cooking in my kitchen a way to make so much yogurt, so a gallon of yogurt at a time for my large family, easier than this thing. So there are tons of ways, and I know you'll tell me in the comments below all the ways there are to make yogurt. I know because I've tried it, and it's just so difficult to keep it at that consistent, perfect 115-degree temperature the entire time to get the consistent yogurt results that you want. I've never had such consistent, perfect results in such large quantities as with this thing. Now, if you are not a large family, you can make yogurt in jars and put it in the crock pot, wrap it in towels, all that kind of stuff. But for a large family, pour in the milk, add the starter. It's just so much easier and simplifies my life, because I found that I wasn't really making yogurt very often just because of how hard it was. With this, it makes it so easy. I have 2 tutorials for yogurt. I have one for traditional yogurt and one for raw milk yogurt, both made in the Instant Pot. I'll link those again in the description below. I think that's all you pretty much need to know about the settings. You could also use the slow cook setting, and this will help this to function a little bit more like a crock pot. So you'll notice when you press the slow cook button, let me turn that off again, that neither the low pressure nor the high pressure here is illuminated. And the reason for that is it's just going to cook it on low for 7.5 hours. You can of course increase that, decrease that, but it is not going to come to pressure. It's going to work like a crock pot. So if you love crock pot meals in your home, you can replace that with the Instant Pot, and you can have the stainless steel without having to worry about what's lining that inner crock. All right, let's talk a little bit about safety, because I know that's a lot of people's concern. This thing comes to super high pressure, and that's what allows things to cook so fast and to have that tender falling off the bone for grass-fed meats and chicken. And the pressure is its greatest advantage, but it also is the biggest safety concern. People know that people can make bombs with pressure cookers, so it's definitely something you want to be aware of. For me, I just like to make sure that it's pushed all the way against the back of the counter so that if anything would make it go off the counter, it wouldn't unlock the safety valve or something like that. So make sure it's pushed back. I used to cook with the baby in the Moby wrap by it, and several people told me on my channel not to do that. And so now I like to not be holding any children while dealing with the Instant Pot. I can tell you that we've never had any issues with it coming unlocked or any issues at all, really. However, just be cautious about those things and that they could happen. So push it all the way against the back of the counter. Don't leave it on the edge of your cabinet. Don't carry small children while you're opening it or dealing with it anyway. It gets really hot, so even if it doesn't explode, you still wouldn't want any of the steam if something gets released to get released on the baby and hurt the child. Also, another thing is when I release the pressure, I like to make sure that no one is nearby because it comes out pretty forcefully and you don't want any of that steam to go onto anyone. I also, when I'm releasing the pressure, I like to kind of pull it out a little bit from under my cabinet so that the steam doesn't go underneath the cabinets. That's not something I read anywhere. It just kind of makes sense because it's a lot of moisture. I guess that's not really a safety thing so much as a, I don't want to damage my cabinets type of thing. But if it's in an open area, say you're not on a counter under a cabinet, then just feel free to release that steam and let it go everywhere. Also note that the sides get very, very hot while it's in operation. So again, you don't want children to touch the outside. It can get super hot. The lid will get hot. It'll stay hot for a while. As long as you always touch this top part, you don't have to use a hot pad or anything. I usually do need to use oven mitts to pull this out because this, of course, gets really hot. Okay, so now for a few cooking tips. One thing to remember is that you always have to have water. So this cannot come to pressure if you just put like something dry in there like a whole chicken or a roast and don't add any water, you can't do that. It will not be good. It might burn. I don't really know. It wouldn't come to pressure. Another is that some recipes will call for a natural release. Now what this basically just means is that instead of flipping the switch from sealing to venting and letting all of the steam just pop out the instant that the food is done, you allow the steam to slowly escape. This is for certain recipes where you want the meat to achieve a certain tenderness or something like that. Me personally, I use the Instant Pot because I'm always in a hurry. I don't really follow recipes, so I'm always just releasing the pressure and getting the food on the table. There are times whenever we're not ready to eat right away and we happen to do a natural release, but just if you see that on a recipe that you're following, you will want to just leave it on sealing and let it release for 20 minutes or whatever the recipe calls for. The next is something in between. Some recipes call for half a natural release, half of a normal release, in which case they'll tell you just to let it naturally release the pressure for 10 minutes, then pop over and flip it to venting. So that is an option as well and what some recipes call for. The other is just a quick release, and that is just where you flip the little knob and everything will just steam out whenever you put it on venting, and you'll be ready to eat within a minute or two. It takes a minute or two to release the pressure. Now do note that whenever you are looking at a recipe and it says that it only needs to cook for 5 minutes. So example, my hard-boiled eggs. They only have to cook for 5 minutes. You can do a dozen hard-boiled eggs. However, always calculate into your cook time, so if you're in a big hurry, make sure to know that it still takes a good 5 to 10 minutes to come to pressure. Now, the more water content that the recipe has, the longer it will take to come to pressure. So for example, if you're making homemade bone broth and it's mostly water and bones, it will take a lot longer than a cup of water in a chicken or hard-boiled eggs. The less water you have, the faster it will come to pressure. All right, I've already mentioned throughout this video, even though I said I'd save it for the end, but I already just couldn't help myself, mentioned my favorite things to make in the Instant Pot. I honestly don't make much else in it, but it stays pretty busy with those things. And those are bone broth, whole chickens, roast, and yogurt. Now I have made beans in here. I believe I have made oatmeal in here, but it's not something I do all the time. Usually for those applications, I'll just use my stove, but you totally can. You can make soups in here, and I believe I've done that as well. But my favorite things are the ones I mentioned. I have tutorials and recipes for all of those things here on my YouTube channel. I'll link them below. I have an Instant Pot playlist, which I also plan to add a lot of other things to as I come across other ways to use my Instant Pot. Oh yeah, and then hard-boiled eggs as well, which I mentioned previously. But with how often we make all of those things, we almost always have bone broth in our home and homemade yogurt. I don't really need to incorporate a whole lot else, or I would need another Instant Pot because it would be in use way too often to incorporate anything else. Now, if you do want to try some more recipes, my dear friend Cammie and her sister Marcy, I actually had the opportunity to go last week to a blog conference with my friend Cammie. We've been to, I believe, 3 blog conferences together now. I've even been able to visit her home. She wrote a book. It's called Mastering the Electric Pressure Cooker. It has all kinds of recipes in there. They even make things that I never even knew you could make in an Instant Pot. So if you're looking for a really good resource like that, I'll link that in the description below. You can check out their book. It is the most beautiful Instant Pot book I've ever seen, and it is a good resource if you're a beginner and you just want a little bit more to read and thumb through and dig into. It might also make a really good gift this Christmas. If you are gifting somebody with an Instant Pot, be a good book to accompany your gift. All right, although I think that I covered everything because I wrote down some notes, I'm positive there's something that I forgot. So if that is the case, make sure to leave that in the comments below. If there's enough questions, I'll make a second video. If not, I'll just try to pop in and answer those comments to respond to some of your questions. I'll leave a link in the description below to my Instant Pot, as well as the insert and the glass lid. I have an Amazon shop at amazon.com/shop/farmhouse on Boone, where I link all of my favorite kitchen tools. pretty minimalist because there are only a few things I feel like I really can't live without, but this is definitely one of them. All right, well, if you are brand new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I make 2 new videos every week on food from scratch, natural living, and a handmade home. Thank you so much for stopping by the farmhouse.